16 months after a deadly crash, the Mendon community weighs in on how to make railroads safer.
And temperature is much cooler than we were at this time yesterday. We've got your weekend forecast plus, if you missed it earlier, my winter weather outlook.
And how our shortage of dentists is impacting rural areas in Missouri. This is KMU8 News at 10.
Coverage you can count on. KOMU8 News starts now.
As we said earlier, it's been 16 months since an Amtrak train crashed with a dump truck and derailed in Sheridan County. The crash killed 4 people and injured 150 people. It happened in the small town of Mendon. The crossing didn't have mechanical arms, lights, or bells to warn drivers of ongoing traffic. Tonight, the community got to weigh in on different proposals to make railroads safer. Good evening, I'm Evie Allen.
And I'm Emily Spain. Thanks for joining us tonight. KOMU8's Hunter Walterman heard from people who were concerned about the state closing some crossings and has that story tonight from Sheridan County.
Tonight, MoDOT held a public meeting here at Northwestern High School in Mendon. It's just a short drive from the site of that deadly train derailment in 2022. There are 1,400 crossings just like that one, and they're called passive crossings. That means there are no lights and no gates. After the crash, MoDOT got $50 million from the state to improve rail crossings in Missouri. It's a one-time spending bump. Normally, MoDOT gets about $6 million a year to improve rail crossings. And $6 million is near the estimate for rail crossing improvements in Sheridan County. MoDOT wants to improve safety at 4 crossings and close 4 crossings. MoDOT's assistant chief engineer says they are prioritizing safety along passenger rail lines, but that these crossings also include freight rail, which can make them very busy.
This rail line here approaches over 60 trains a day, 2 of those being passenger trains. But that's very busy when you start dividing up the hours of the day. It's very constant.
Some residents tonight were concerned that the closings could increase traffic in the area, but the process is far from over. MoDOT is going to take the public feedback from tonight and also work with Sheridan County and private freight company BNSF, which actually owns the rail lines here, to develop a plan. If you want to see the proposals from MoDOT, just head over to our website, KOMU.com. In Mendon, Hunter Walterman, KOMU8 News.
We're looking at a lot of cloud cover across mid-Missouri. We've seen that cloud cover through the day, and now we continue to see that across mid-Missouri. Sunshine in store for us, too. We've got a full look at your forecast coming up.
Okay, thanks, Matt. Tonight, police are investigating the deaths of 2 people in central Columbia. Police responded to the scene in the 500 block of Woodlawn Avenue around 12:15 this afternoon. They could not say how the 2 might have died, whether they were connected, or if either of them lived in the home. Investigators were on the scene for about 5 hours. A CPD spokesperson says there is no threat to the community. Columbia police have arrested a 5th suspect in connection to a June homicide on Dove Drive. Maurice Penny Jr. is charged with hindering prosecution of a felony. CPD says when officers tried to arrest him, he drove away. After a short chase, he was arrested and taken to the Boone County Jail, where he's being held. Officials are still looking for 3 more suspects.
Administrators and the Workers Union for the Daniel Boone Regional Library are the closest they've ever been to reaching a new contract deal for workers. Both groups say they hope to reach an agreement by the first of the year. The Daniel Boone Regional Library Workers United brought nearly 25 issues to administrators in October of last year. The groups have worked together, about 20 of them, but are still working on wages, health insurance, and subcontracting.
We decided, you know what, we like our job, we love the library, we love the community, but a lot of the conditions of our work aren't things that we necessarily want to continue.
There are some things that the library cannot give in on, just for management reasons. There are some things that are easy for us to agree to.
The library board is set to meet next Wednesday. Well, it's no secret rural communities struggle with health care access, and that makes it harder for people to go to the dentist.
KOMU8's Julius Evans shows us how widespread this problem is here in Missouri.
Take a look at this map from the Missouri Department of Health. Only the small group of counties in blue have enough dentists per capita that leaves most of the state underserved. Counties like Cowley and Montauk and Miller are even in the severe shortage range. I talked to a Fulton mom who says dental accessibility is just the root of the problem. The daycare owner, Mackenzie Vandewitt, she says it's been a growing pain getting her family the help they need.
For my middle girl, she ended up having to have a root canal, and that was a day out of school after having 3 appointments to try and find somebody in the area that said that they could do it.
She says that has been costly in more ways than the dental bill.
Taking the time off of work to have to drive further away because we don't really have enough dentists in the area to accommodate everybody's needs.
And providers are seeing the struggles in the office every day. Dr. Parrott with Aspen Dental says 42% of his patients come from outside of Columbia.
They don't have the dental care that they need.
And he says the few doctors in rural areas are sometimes overwhelmed with the amount of patients.
And so patients that are in pain with emergencies, they have nowhere to go.
For those patients, trips that would normally be too far away are now close enough for emergency dental clinics like Dr. Patel's.
Going into the medical urgent care, the emergency room, all they can really get is antibiotics and pain medication. It doesn't solve the source of the problem, which is the actual tooth.
According to Missouri census data from 1993 to 2023, the state's population has grown by over 1 million. But the Department of Health says the number of dentists hasn't kept up with the population growth. The Missouri Director of Oral Health says the root of the problem is complex.
Back in the 90s, there were actually 3 dental schools, and now we're down to 1, or we were down to 1 up until 10 years ago.
Now there's 3 dental schools in the state, but students who graduate leave with significant debt.
Increasing the funding for loan repayment to help areas of decreased access would be just a huge help.
Meanwhile, for Vandewitt back home in Fulton, she and others just want something hopeful to smile about.
You're taking time off of work, you're taking time, away from the kids at school, and that to me is kind of the biggest thing.
The Missouri Director of Oral Health says 14 states don't have dental schools, including our neighbors in Kansas and Arkansas. And according to the Health Resources and Services Administration, there's 12,828 dental health professional shortage areas in the country. In the studio, Julius Evans, KMU8 News.
The U.S. announced today Israel will pause fighting for 4 hours every day.
The goal is to use the time to safely get aid into Gaza and to get tens of thousands of civilians out of the territory. Civilians are fleeing intensifying clashes between Israel's military and Hamas. Now, President Biden says there will be 2 humanitarian passages to help people flee hostile areas in Gaza. A senior UN official is accusing both sides of war crimes as Israel's ground assault and aerial bombardment fuel growing international outrage. The White House says there will be an announcement 3 hours before the pauses. Conversations about Israel and Gaza are happening between advocates and representatives here in Missouri. Concerned citizens gathered today to talk with U.S. Senators Eric Schmitt and Josh Hawley. Members involved in the event held signs and are demanding an immediate ceasefire from the Israeli government, unlimited humanitarian aid to cross into Gaza, and the end of U.S. financial support for Israel. One human rights advocate calls it a fight for human rights.
To see this indiscriminate attacks and unjustified attacks to this level on civilians is really unacceptable. And I wouldn't accept it for anyone else, and there's no reason why we would justify it against the Palestinian people.
That advocate says the human rights of Palestinian people have been threatened for decades. And while they expect legislators to listen to their concerns, she says listening is not enough. Advocates will gather this Saturday at the MU Speaker Circle at 2.
A former Columbia resident and her family who were stuck in Gaza are now safely home. Emily Rauschenberger and her husband and their 5 children took shelter in 3 to 4 different homes for a month until they finally exited Gaza safely last week. Today, Emily and her daughter recounted some of the most terrifying experiences they say they lived through, including surviving with limited water, food, no electricity or internet, all while hearing the sounds of bombs.
Just hearing all these whizzing and bangs, and it jumped up and looked outside, and just all these white streaks across the sky, just continuing to, every window of the house, like in different directions.
Emily and her family were processed a week ago and left through Egypt at that time. They are all back in their home now in the UK. Coming up, after more than 50 years in the National Zoo, a family of endangered giant pandas heads back to China.
And if you missed my winter weather outlook at 6, we're going to dive into what the trends and patterns are setting up to be for the winter season. That's coming up after the break.
With temperatures already dropping, that means winter weather is not far behind. Now, snow, freezing rain, and sleet, winter can throw a lot our way.
It sure can. KLB8's Chief Meteorologist Matt Beckwith explains what we can expect with his winter weather outlook.
We're looking at temperatures by next week and the end of next week that could be almost 10 degrees above average. We'll keep you updated.
Okay, thanks, Matt. Coming up, why multiple pet food companies have expanded a recall.
But first, here's a look at your lottery numbers. Good luck. Pet food companies have expanded a recall because it could contain salmonella. Impacted brands include Victor's Super Premium Dog Foods, Wayne Feeds Dog Food, Eagle Mountain Pet Food, and some Members Marks varieties. They have best buy dates before October 31st of next year, and as of last Wednesday, 7 people have reported salmonella infections.
The last of giant pandas at the National Zoo are heading back home to China. The 3 pandas boarded planes this afternoon to move to their new homes. Their departure comes after over 50 years of a successful giant panda conservation program between the U.S. and China. Only 4 pandas remain here in the U.S., and they're at the Atlanta Zoo. Colby.
After cruising in Game 1 to start the season 1-0, Game 2 might not be so easy for Mizzou Hoops. Hear from head coach Dennis Gates going into tomorrow's matchup against Memphis.
Temperatures on Friday start in the middle 30s. We get to the upper 50s in the afternoon. Lots of sunshine going to be with us through the day. Saturday starts mostly sunny, but I do think as we head later into the day, we're looking at a lot more cloud cover. Highs in the upper 50s, 60s on Sunday, and then temperatures holding above average with highs in the 60s, good amounts of sunshine. You know what's missing from this forecast, Emily, Evie?
Snow.
Well, yes. I was going to say rain. I'm not trying to skip ahead yet.
I don't know. I'm seeing all the Christmas lights go up on houses, and I'm like, we need a little dusting.
I could be okay with that.
You know, that like melts and doesn't cause too much.
Right around 32.
But we need moisture. The drought continues. We need rain. We need moisture of some sort.
Yeah.
None of it in the next 8 days, though. At least no beneficial moisture.
Okay.
That's it. It's time. It's our weekend.